Good morning, good afternoon, good day to anyone that ends up watching this. My name is Eliberto Vela Jr., and I'm going to talk about what feminism means to me now that I've gone through our feminist geography course here at UTSA. Prior to this course and to many other readings that we've done over the last few months, I thought I had a rough idea of what being a feminist meant, and even already classified myself as a feminist. But by reflecting on my life and the ideas we've progressed through this course, I found that many of my ideas and preconceptions I had about feminism have been shaped by my life experiences and then in my interactions with the various men and women I've worked with, as my life has gone on. Looking back, while I was growing up, I was only really exposed to what I would call a more quiet, maybe even subdued form of feminism coming from South Texas, Tejano culture that's really, really heavily steeped in machismo even today. My examples back then, my role models were, my grandmothers, my mother, my various aunts that, while they were surrounded by kind of this systematic culture, I don't know if I would say oppression, but this culture that just historically, oppressed or, put women second, that machismo culture, they were, kind of my inspiration and what I thought, was a feminist before. They forged their own paths. They had, agency for themselves. And even as recently as a few months ago, like they're starting to, use their own agency for, very different purposes. Another example that I would like to reflect on is probably my time in the United States Marine Corps. It's the smallest military branch there is in the United States, and it has the fewest amount of women in the armed forces. Again, this is it's a masculine alpha culture where everyone is trained to and embraces that alpha mentality. Even the women, the women I met and interacted with during that time are what I consider to be, some of the strongest women in the world I could ever meet. And I thought, back then treating them equally, as they went through many of the same shared experiences of me, training and warfare, I thought, hey, yeah, these are, women you treat equally, that's being a feminist is, treating them equally because we've gone through war together, we've gone through training, we've gone through this hardship type of thing. The problem was, back then I was pretty blissfully unaware of even though we belong to that same organization and we acquired ranks and pay and all that, we were far from being equals due to the overarching inequalities that were built into that system itself. That was something really eye-opening, looking back on reflection. And then, like I said, looking back and becoming more educated on the subject, it's easier for me to see the systematic oppression that was built into an organization that I thought prided itself on, treating everybody fairly. There's a saying, there's no racism in the Corps. Everybody's treated equally like shit, which is both true, but at the same time, there's varying levels that I can now look back and think on. Because even then, even if I agreed with it, yes, there are physiological differences between, men and women, but that shouldn't be the case, but this was something much deeper than just that. From there, I made my way to classes here, like our feminist geography course that have, greatly expanded my views on what feminism and being a feminist is. I know David, another one of my classmates, mentions that there's been very few classes that address it as directly as this one, and I would agree with that. I have gone through a couple of bachelor's degrees now in anthropology and in GES. Usually, even the class that kind of does have a section about it only goes over for a few weeks or maybe a chapter or two, depending on what we're reading or what we're doing. And it was through this class that I like to look at two authors that become some of my favorites since kind of going down this pathway, and that was Jill Valentine and Donna Haraway. Haraway I actually read extensively as an anthropology student as well. So Haraway's questions about the science of feminism and perspectives of privilege play a great role in how I read and interpret feminist authors now. To me, objectivity has become one of the key words in attempting any study because I don't think anyone can be truly impartial, especially with hot button topics like this. But I believe in applications, especially like the application of her cyborg theory, are key in forming how I would personally would like to conduct research and learn about feminism in general. Because scientists, objectivity is supposed to be the greatest thing, but especially with humans, it's impossible to be completely objective in my mind. But after reading her, I was also made more aware of how, writing in science fiction, which is one of my favorite genres of television and literature. My bookshelf is full of just science fiction books that I read, on my own personal time. But just even her showing how science fiction has been one of the, like, a key contributor in promoting feminism throughout time, dating all the way back to the original Star Trek. Now I find myself looking for feminist perspectives in almost anything that I even watch on TV nowadays. And then the other author that I like to learn about more is Jill Valentine. And then she stuck with me a lot this semester too, especially one of the earlier papers we read about the geography of women's fear. And I had never really seen geography as a, as a science that can study fear in this manner. I've known fear like this, especially when I first moved to the city. I was coming from a relatively sheltered, country bumpkin kind of upbringing. And everything here, was scary for a young 18-year-old that had never, been out of his hometown area. And then I didn't even realize that I was already, at a greater advantage than a woman coming from my area, just on the basis of me being a man. The ideas of mental maps, safe spaces, routes of travel chosen, to avoid areas that might be dangerous or violent, even urban design that I was aware of because of my own life experiences took on a whole new meaning. Because of my life, I tend to look at things tactically with a military perspective, even as a male perspective, if I'm just being honest. But now I just look at these layers of feminist theory that have kind of been ingrained upon me, and that I've been made aware of, and I'm finding myself thinking, hey, how would a woman see this? How would a woman view this path through this park? Even me as a man, like, I'm cautious if I'm walking through a park at night. Then it's, wow, how would I look at this if I was a woman? Just recently, I read a book called Emergent Ecologies that put the idea of ontological amphibians, really firmly in my mind as a method of study that greatly influences how I will want to be a professional, no matter what career path I end up on. The idea of switching freely between those ontological perspectives greatly appeals to me, and especially how I look at ontologies. In my mind, it's like a multi-layered Venn diagram that continually stacks and overlaps, with many of those circles, kind of forming a tower. And then now, I would say, especially after all these readings and the classes, and especially the discussions and seeing all these different points of views, I would be happy, and I'm more than willing. I would say it's essential to have that feminist circle as part of that Venn diagram. Whereas you're not always going to be in that circle, obviously, you're going to combine it. The goal is always to try and be in the middle of that diagram, adopting all those ontologies or forming your own, amalgam of them, if I could say that. And that would be my goal, because I would say, the feminist perspective is something, I don't know if I would ever be able to fully understand, but it's something I would like to incorporate in my life, no matter what I'm doing, what I'm studying, what I'm reading, what I'm watching, even just interactions in the world. Urban geography and the study of how urbanism, the male-dominated, design of cities is forever in my mind now. So saying that, I don't think I'll ever look at anything from any singular point of view again. And now I'd like to try to be, that cyborg, that amphibian that makes the effort to see things from multiple, if not all, because I don't think I'd ever be able to see all perspectives. But that's my new goal, especially after this. My new idea of feminism isn't just based on equality, like it was before, but the idea that everything can be seen from many perspectives, many ontologies, and to see the world from as many lenses as possible, and to be able to learn, appreciate, and hopefully help change the world in a better manner for that. I think feminist geography and learning about feminism in general, especially, as a man that comes from, that background that's so steeped in its ways, it's a great perspective, and it's something, obviously I'm not an expert in, probably never will be, but it's something that is good to learn, and I would highly encourage anybody to learn more about it.